Well, I'm the luckiest co-host in the world because I got Dr. Producer Suzanne back again today. How are you?
2 days back to back. I'm so excited to be with you. Thanks for having me.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Everybody, welcome to No Vacancy Live. We got Dr. Producer Suzanne Bagnara there. I, of course, am Glenn Hausman, and I want to thank you folks out there for spending your time with us and allowing us to give you the opportunity to share and learn and grow. And boy, Suzanne, today is going to be a big day for learning and understanding a segment of the industry that I don't usually get.
It's true, and hopefully we'll educate you by the end of today's session, right?
Well, we'll see. All right, so hopefully we won't shame the memory of my father too much because he was an attorney, and we're going to be talking a lot about legal issues today because there's been a hotbed of stuff going on in the hospitality industry. But before I bring on our guests, I want to say, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you folks out there at the Hunter Hotel Investment Conference next week in Atlanta. I'll be hosting one of the roundtable sessions as part of the table. And of course, I'm going to be doing a panel on Wednesday at 11:15, talking to owners, talking to the brands, and seeing where they come together, where they conflict with each other, all of that kind of fun stuff. And, maybe we'll get some good people laughing at me as well. So worth your time to be there. All right. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about at the Hunter Conference is the state of investment. And a lot of the lawsuits that have been going on in the industry have to do with that. So let's bring back to the show for his 10th live appearance, Michael Shindler, president for Corners Advisors. Michael, how are you, sir?
Good. Good morning. It's a beautiful day in Phoenix.
Yes, and a beautiful day here in New York. Suzanne, what's the South Florida beautifulness?
I think when I ran across this campus, it was like 76 degrees today. I think at the high of 79. It's not humid, so it's beautiful. I love it.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in for our cross-country weather report. And now we got that. Let's take a look at it looks like stormy days ahead. And in the past for the hospitality industry when it comes to lawsuits. But big announcement yesterday, and I've been kind of sitting on the sidelines for most of this story. It looks like Choice has given up in their pursuit to take over Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. That's big news. I didn't see that necessarily playing out in this particular fashion. Michael, why don't you give us a little bit of an update on the whole story? But first, why do you think they ceased at this time?
Well, technically, they didn't cease. Their tender offer for the shares expired, and they chose not to renew it. A little bit of history here. Last April, I think early April, Choice made its initial proposal to the Wyndham board. They had been talking for some time before that. Mm-hmm. And Choice made its initial proposal for about an $8 billion transaction, almost 10 with the assumption of Wyndham's debt. But a significant component of the purchase price for Wyndham shares was going to be paid in Choice stock.
Right.
And I don't remember the exact percentages, right, but as I recall, it was about 55 or 60% stock and the rest in cash. Mm-hmm. Choice's stock price at the time, and I looked this up yesterday in anticipation of this question, was just over $117 on March 31st, which was a Friday, and it closed on April 3rd at $117.61. Toward the end of the month, while these conversations were going on, it went up to $127.52. Mm-hmm. And then in August, it hit its high for the last 12 months, basically, at $134. So at that point in August, the stock price was riding pretty high. And it would have made the exchange offer, if it weren't changed, more valuable to the Wyndham folks.
So there, so we could further explain what's going on. So obviously, when the stock has a higher value, if you're trading for X amount of shares, the higher the value per share, the richer the deal is, and the more likely you'll be able to close it. But if that share price drops from the time that you make this initial offering, then it becomes a less desirable deal and gets harder to push over the finish line. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's fair, and I think the challenge is this was an offer, and for $90 a share of Wyndham, of which some was stock, some was cash. Yeah. So the issue was whether the price per share for the Wyndham stock would remain the same, or once the exchange was fixed, it was rise and fall with Choice's stock price.
Right.
And so that could make a difference. By the same token, it meant as if they were still going to use the same percentage of stock for the same dollar amount, that meant they were paying more shares, further diluting the Choice ownership. So it never got to the point where anybody knew all the details of that offer.
Right.
In October, after months and months of conversation, and Wyndham basically said, no, we're not interested. In October, Choice launched its hostile tender offer for the share. Right. It appears that Wyndham's continuing intransigence about the transaction, and there's no obligation for them to negotiate.
Great word.
Basically, that Choice didn't get enough in this tender offer that it made sense for them to renew it. Everybody's spending money. Everybody's taking care, worrying about this stuff. And so I think they basically said, all right, we didn't get enough tendered. We're going to fold our tents. Yeah. Now, interestingly, they did get some. They had bought some in the open market. They had proposed an entire slate of directors. So it will be interesting to see how Choice, and they've now eliminated the hostile directors. It will be interesting to see how they dispose of the shares in Wyndham they now own. And if they got over a certain percent, whether they actually have to register that with the SEC,
right?
Getting into the technicalities of securities laws that are way beyond my understanding.
Are they legally required to dispose of those shares, or is it a good financial move, or do you just hold on to it and try to exude some influence?
I don't think there's a legal requirement. But again, despite the fact that I got the highest grade in my class in securities law, right, that was 47 years ago.
Right.
So I don't know what the rules are on a takeover. I don't think continuing to exert influence does Choice a lot of good. If they have nobody on the board, then they're just like a disgruntled shareholder.
Right.
So either they're going to hold on to it thinking that Wyndham shared, let's see if Mr. Holmes's comment that we have a way to drive our stock price higher comes true. You can hold the feet to the fire a little bit, but it's going to look ugly if they try to do that.
So they could theoretically be put into an unusual position of having to root for their competitor's success so the stock goes up so they can sell it at a higher profit, right?
Well, interestingly, Choice's stock went up yesterday, by about $3.
Wow! So that's an indication that Wall Street says that, hey, maybe this was a good move for you to allow to happen.
Probably time to allow it, although I think it was down this morning a little bit. But
it doesn't typically happen though. Like you get that surge and then it pulls back a little bit when news stories like this go. At least,
what I didn't look at, interestingly, is I didn't look at Wyndham to see what happened to its shares.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. You should probably know that.
but Wyndham was prepared for the status quo, whereas Choice, it's a change in their approach for the moment.
Right. All right. So they are up 0.65% today.
Wyndham?
858, 65 cents, 0.84%. And
which one?
I'm talking about Wyndham now.
Wyndham. Okay.
Down from 74.34 on March 11th. They're up 4.4% in the last 5 days total.
So maybe it's not so bad for Wyndham either.
Yeah.
In terms of the market.
Yeah. I wish I saw this coming so I could, have purchased some stocks in both companies, because that would not be insider trading. We don't need any of that.
Technically, it wouldn't be insider trading.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. So, now that issue is dead and gone, do you think that there'll be more opportunities out there or more attempts for some sort of consolidation between other companies in the mix out there in the industry?
I sort of love reading about that stuff. I hope so.
Yeah.
I think that there are companies that could be had. There was a piece this morning about I think it was in Hotel Investment Today about H World Hotel, the Chinese company that bought Deutsche Hospitality and changed the name. Looking to be in expansionist mode. And the easiest way to get into the United States is to buy something.
Correct.
Because building a brand one by one is nightmarish for development officers.
Just to go back a little bit, help me, my memory's a little bit fuzzy, but I remember when Hyatt bought, was it Amera Suites and turned them into Hyatt Places or something along that line, right? So they were able to take a nascent brand and then within a year after transitioning the properties, boom, have well over 100, and they were kind of on their way. Was that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much right. That was 2000, 2002, 2003.
Wow, that long ago? So I never heard any of that. Wow.
Yeah. But that was the way to do it. I mean, in the old days, I think it was Residence Inn was actually Jack DeBoer, and Marriott bought that.
Yep.
And look at it now. Embassy was standalone, and I think it was Hilton that bought.
We had Promise Hotel brands with
Promise. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that there are
quick point so everybody knows. Promise was located in Memphis. So if you wonder why Hilton has offices in Memphis, it came from back when Hilton had their headquarters in Beverly Hills before they moved to Virginia and have been trying to consolidate everything sort of ever since. Anyway, go on, Michael.
No, I think that there are management companies that have some ownership that are of decent scale and scope in the 20, 25, 30. For years and years, everybody wondered why Omni existed by a standalone, why Lowe's existed as a standalone. These are hotels with companies with 14, 15, 20, 22 hotels. And certainly in the case of Lowe's, great company, but it's in a conglomerate. Does it belong there?
Lowe's Hotels I love, but it's kind of a weird how it's almost like two companies in one. It's like they got all of these great properties, and I'm looking forward to going to the Lowe's Ventana in Tucson in September. That's going to be exciting. But then you have all like the Universal Studios properties that people don't even realize are operated by them, and that they keep expanding.
And owned by them as well, owned in partnership with them. Because when I was at Hard Rock, we were part of that three-way partnership on the Hard Rock Hotel, and the first two that preceded those. And then all the new ones are 50-50 between Universal and Lowe's.
Right.
And they make money hand over fist, which is why Lowe's is more than happy to be in.
Yeah.
But so there are companies out there, and I know nothing about Omni's ownership, but you wonder sometimes why they do it. It's a capital required business. And, every 7 years you got to renovate it and you got to spend more capital.
Yeah.
And occasionally you get COVID and you lose capital just to keep the doors open.
Yep.
It's a tough business to be in. And so the H World, there's been talk for years about the Chinese companies trying to make a mark here. I think Radisson, for example, was owned by Chinese, but now, of course, Choice bought it.
Yep.
So it's a lot easier, though, to buy and build from a base than it is to build from no base.
Yeah, you got that right. Suzanne, jump in.
Yeah,
here.
you certainly can expand faster and quicker that way. I've enjoyed many opportunities where we've had mergers back in my day of being a general manager. So it's nerve-wracking to say the least when you add that many hotels overnight.
Well, I mean, look at Sonesta's a great example of that. Yeah. Sonesta grew relatively inorganically, and just went crazy. And you know, they seem now to have their arms around it.
Yeah.
But it's not an immediate.
Well, you don't go from several dozen properties to over 1,000 properties without, you know, a couple of lessons learned along the way. You know,
one hopes the lessons are learned. Yeah.
They seem to be having a lot of great traction, and I'd like to thank them for having me be a part of their annual conference at the end of May in Las Vegas. I'm looking forward to being there and hosting their awards ceremony, which would be a whole lot of fun. Michael, another big issue in the industry. This is a lawsuit I didn't see coming out of anywhere. CoStar and major hotel brands are being sued for attempted collusion out there. I don't know about this one.
It's first the law firm that filed it deserves a great deal of credence. These guys are heavyweights in the plaintiff class action sphere. They made their bones in the tobacco litigation and have grown several offices across the country. They are the real deal. They are not out chasing ambulances.
Right.
Having said that,
yep.
They were also the plaintiff's lawyer in the lawsuit in Las Vegas that accused many of the casinos of, again, price fixing.
This was through
colluding. Pardon me?
Was that through TripAdvisor or another?
No, it was through one of the revenue management firms.
Oh, right.
Rainmaker.
Yeah, I remember. All right, sorry.
And I think that the case was dismissed against MGM, and I think it sort of fell apart against the other defendants because they vaguely suggested that using the same company's software created the ability to get data back and forth and getting the same recommendations from the software inputs.
Right. Well, that doesn't make any sense because that would have implications for every industry in the United States if that was the case, because there's vendors that sell software at every industry.
Well, and so too, you know, the airline industry is the one everybody says, well, why aren't they suing the airlines right now? Right. But what they've said is that it's sort of a hub and spoke kind of claim that the hotel companies, for example, and when you say the big ones, I mean, we're talking Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, Intercon, Accor US, and somebody else is in there. I'm missing someone. I'm sorry. Okay. And then if you weren't named as a defendant, you were named as a conspirator. But what has happened is they're saying that because of the rules that Smith Travel, CoStar's parent, CoStar's subsidiary now.
Right. And just before the Great Recession, STR sold to CoStar in a big play.
Big transaction. And CoStar had been the leading data gatherer / provider in the real estate industry. And they added the most prominent one in the hotel business to their stable.
Totally. STR has been the standard of benchmarking, and it was already the standard when I started in this business back in 1996. So it's been around.
And it actually got into the business. Randy Smith apparently started right about the time I got into the business in 1986. Wow. So I guess both of us have grown up. They've gotten a lot bigger than I have.
At least they finally embraced technology, because we had to do it like by hand and call it in and then go through Holodex to load our numbers in. So, but it's been around for a length.
That tells us where you worked.
Yeah. All right. So the reason why I'm like worried about this lawsuit here, in the sense that it doesn't seem to hold up, is that the lead attorney quoted to Reuters saying Teddy Roosevelt passed the antitrust laws to prevent titans of industry from price fixing in smoke-filled rooms, calling the defendant's conduct the modern equivalent. That doesn't seem to be a big legalese type of an argument. It seems to be appealing towards emotion.
That's the public face, and how the law firm found the named plaintiffs makes for interesting speculation. And, you know, I wonder if the lead plaintiff's family name is Portillo. And I wonder if she walked into their offices and said, I want to sue the hotel companies. Somehow I doubt it.
Right.
But the interesting thing here is that they're not saying that Hilton, Hyatt, and Intercon and Marriott got on the phone and the revenue managers of each of those companies got on the phone and said, okay, let's fix the prices only in these 15 of the 25 largest STR markets. It's not the other 10.
Right.
They didn't say that. They're saying that STR's requirement of data received from the hotel companies in order to get the aggregated competitive data for their comp sets. And some of the data that STR sends, particularly about forward bookings in the marketplaces, were able to be used by each of the hotel companies knowingly because they then had access to the data from their competitors. And it sort of falls apart because of the anonymization that STR does in the comps. And it's not as though they're accusing somebody of picking up the phone and calling their counterpart at another hotel.
I would say,
we know is price fixing.
An impartial person that pulls all the information together and puts out benchmarking is very different than that same person saying, hey, let me pass you the information that the other two hotel companies have, and now you can take a look at it and figure out what they're really doing.
But one of the things that they alleged, and they used a quote from the Deputy Attorney General for Antitrust Enforcement of the Department of Justice, is that using an intermediary to fix is just the same as doing it directly. So that the connector is that STR is the common thread among how they each set their pricing. Now, they ignore a few things. Most of the hotel companies are using either proprietary or off-the-shelf but customized revenue management software. Most of the hotel companies don't manage all the hotels, and they certainly don't manage the revenue management function of all of the hotels in the markets where they were allegedly fixing prices. And the definition of the luxury hotel market is very broad and probably brings in some companies, some hotels under each of the brands in each of the 15 markets that don't really belong there.
Is the lawsuit using STR's definition of luxury hotels?
Well, no, not even close. They're effectively talking about the old bugaboo 4-star and 5-star. Well, unless you're looking at Forbes, there is really no such thing in our industry as 4-star and 5-star. It's just loosely used. If you're using STR's definitions, they've gone down to upscale and maybe even just to upscale in the way they've defined some of these hotels. So that the definition of the geographic market and what the market is, and any old lawyers that might be listening to this, there was a seminal case in antitrust law, and frankly, I don't remember which way it went, but DuPont was sued for monopolizing the cellophane business. And DuPont argued, well, it's not just cellophane that is food wrap. It's wax paper, it's parchment paper, it's butcher paper, it's tinfoil. And they said, cellophane is too narrow a market for what we are competing against. And whether they won or lost, which I don't remember from.
I like the argument, though. It's interesting.
The point is that it's the same thing here. You've got to define the market specifically enough that it really can be segregated and made discrete. And I'm not sure that they've done that quite well. Now, the interesting thing about this case, it was filed, see if I can find the exact date here, in, let's call it the 17th, 18th of February in Seattle, which is where the law firm is headquartered. Don't recall if any of the plaintiffs were Washington residents. But what's going to happen is that if their reply date is 30 days, the list of law firms that will make an appearance and then ask for an extension to respond is going to be about as blue-blooded and white-shoed as we will ever see.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a fascinating legal battle, and it's buckle up time. I've got an in on getting filings from the docket because it's all public until a court determines that something should be under seal.
Yep.
So when the filings start rolling in, I'll be reviewing them and probably commenting about them. I can't help myself.
Right. Yeah, cool. I'll tell you, I've been learning a lot about legal system with a lot of very high profile cases that have been out there. And one of the areas that I've been learning a lot about are SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies, right?
Correct.
So Barry Sternlicht has been involved in a lot of these, notably in the last 4 years or so. So what is going on with him and these situations? And, how could I become a big time investor like him by following what's going on?
Well, it used to be said that the way to make a small fortune in the hotel business is to start with a large fortune. So,
so true.
So here we go. A special purpose acquisition company is effectively a company that is put together solely to buy another company.
Right.
And it is by law, you can go public with it, which in this case, a Sternlicht entity did in February of 21.
Mm-hmm.
And it has certain limitations. First, you cannot have a company identified to be bought when you go public. Secondly, if you don't spend the money by a certain time, you may, and which I think is 2 years, you have the ability to extend perhaps for a year, perhaps for another 2 years. And I'll get to that in a moment. But at each time you extend, you have to offer anybody who invested to get their money back at the current stock price.
Right.
And so I looked at the filings for, I love the name, Jaws Mustang Acquisition Corp.
Yeah.
Which was Mr. Sternlicht's SPAC in this instance. Mm-hmm. And to step forward before we go back, they signed an agreement, a letter of intent by which Jaws Mustang would acquire two one hotels, both of which are owned by Starwood Capital, which is owned by Barry Sternlicht for the most part. Mm-hmm. And those two are operated by SH Hotels and Resorts, a luxury hotel operator, also owned by or controlled by Mr. Sternlicht. Mm-hmm. And they're buying a British company called De Vere, which has 8 or 9 hotels that Starwood Capital bought some years ago. And they're going to put them all together. The reported numbers suggest that at property level, the portfolio as a whole, the 10 or 11 properties that would be transferred to Jaws, had a 52 million of NOI in 2023 and expected to be around 62 million in 2024. We don't know the price that Jaws is paying Starwood Capital for these. I'm guessing that the valuation is something on the order of between $750 million and $1 billion. Mm-hmm. The principal owner of about a third of the company is Mr. Sternlicht. Mm-hmm. He has institutional investors. And so they raised about, as I recall, they raised about, the initial offering was for $750 million. How much of that they raised in cash and how much of it is commitments, how much of it is debt. But at the moment, according to the most recent proxy, they were selling 75 million shares and Sternlicht controls 25 million shares. So you've got a situation where it is possible that Jaws was created to find an unrelated company, and that somehow in his head perhaps, but that at the end of the day, rather than give all the money back when the time period expires, including taking his own money back, frankly.
Yeah.
I think the idea was that this is something, and that between his Starwood Capital, he'll get a fairness opinion there. Jaws will get a fairness opinion. Presumably the management agreement will stay in place. And this transaction, there's nothing wrong with it under any circumstances.
Right.
I mean, I think Barry is way too smart to screw around with that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just fascinating that he is literally on all three sides of this transaction.
Yep. That's pretty wild.
I don't know that this was his intent in creating the SPAC in February of 2021. That would just be too simple. And I don't know why you'd sit on it. You have to report, you have to do all the institutional things. If the idea was he was going to buy these companies from Starwood Capital, why not do it earlier? I suspect his idea was that he was going to buy other things when that market didn't come through. I mean, a lot of SPACs have failed.
Yeah.
They have not been able to buy the appropriate targets. And that this became almost a fallback at the last resort.
Okay, so interest rates have climbed considerably since February of 2021, right? And it's been harder to get money, and deals have been slowing up. So these theoretically could be prevailing reasons why they were unable to find a suitable partner before stepping in with one of his other companies. Does that make sense?
It's conceivable.
Conceivable, yeah.
We just don't know. And so far, all we see is an LOI.
Yeah.
We don't know what else is going on. We don't know how far they're along there. I will tell you that the extension for the investment, for the SPAC to buy an entity, is now on a month-to-month basis. It's been authorized month by month. The board of directors can make a determination each month through the end of December of this year.
Right. Interesting. All right.
But he's probably got somebody in this office and somebody in this office. They're not talking to each other. And it would be a fascinating thing to be a fly on the wall as to how this all came together.
No doubt. It's very interesting. I love learning about all this stuff because my biggest weakness in the hospitality industry is understanding that how the whole financial world of it works. You know, I just like eating and drinking and getting a good night's sleep. Suzanne, what do you got to ask Michael here?
Which of these lawsuits are you most passionate about following and think can impact our industry the most?
Oh, I think the price fixing lawsuit is one that of interest. I don't think I've raised the issues that I'm aware of that sort of jump off the page. However, I had not, shame on me, I had not realized that STR provided data to the hotels that talk about where things are on a forward basis. And what it is, it's really sort of a percentage of occupancy, and maybe there's some data on ADR in the future, a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months.
But that's more just their general predictions, which they seem to revise throughout the year anyway.
But everybody does that. I mean, so and I know there is software that enables on a real-time basis rate checking.
Absolutely.
So that rather than doing your manual rate check, that I still do occasionally, by the way, when I'm doing an evaluation of a hotel or an evaluation of a market, I'll do a manual rate check. It really doesn't take as long as you might think to do it for 5 or 6 hotels for a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months, weekend, weekday. And I set up my chart and I do it manually. And clearly, that is not violating. I mean, in the first place, I'm not colluding. I'm trying to help a client get into a market. But it is not, the hotels could do that. What they now have is software that does it for them.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I find fascinating here is that because all the companies have, as I said, either proprietary software or customized revenue management software for their company, the way they approach things, it is still only a recommendation.
Yeah.
The only software that has been brought into question here, and I think part of that was a decision that Marriott and Hyatt and Hilton and Intercontinental and Accor all probably use either different providers or different versions of the software from the same provider.
Right.
That they couldn't go after they're all using the same software argument. The real issue is whether this will get far enough along that the revenue management algorithms that each company is using for their managed hotels anyway, whether they want to go public with it, or can they put that into, because first discovery request is provide information about your revenue management software.
Right.
And if they ultimately have to give it, can they give it under seal? Can they provide that, but only within the confines of this case, so that I, for example, as somebody watching the docket, can't see their software?
Right.
Don't know the answer to that. And whether they would want to, or whether they'd figure out a way to get out. I think they're going to file for motions to dismiss on the market, the geographic market. The hotel market as defined is too broad to really accuse them of anything. Oh, by the way, we don't operate, we have 8 hotels and average 8 in each of these markets, and we only operate 2 of them. Right. Franchisees operate the other ones with their own revenue management.
Right. And not only that, but they're different brands and they appeal to different people and they have different revenue drivers and they're really in different neighborhoods at the end of the day, Right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of
the software. We still leverage the use of revenue managers to help make those final decisions that, yes, the computer's giving us a good recommendation, but does that make sense for our marketplace?
That was one of the comments that was in the MGM decision in Las Vegas, is that the revenue management software only kicks out recommendations. Yeah. Somebody has to agree to follow those recommendations. Yes. And that's why you have a director of revenue management. And that's why I happen to believe that the director of revenue management in a hotel should report to the GM and not to the director of sales and marketing, where historically he or she has been parked.
Right.
But I think it should have the same seat at the table.
Right. It should be a dotted line so that there's cooperation, so that they know what's coming, but the direct report should definitely be.
You can't run a hotel without dotted lines everywhere. So
that's awesome. Michael, before we wrap up, any final thoughts, any more observations you want to get out there?
No, I think that I will say I think that Choice and Wyndham will both go their separate ways for a while. Whether Steve Holmes and Pat Pacious will kiss and make up, that's for you gossip guys out there, Glenn.
Yeah, I'm such a big gossip guy.
The significant thing about the Jaws, the SPAC, is that it's just so closely tied. But again, I have enough respect for Sternlicht's business acumen to believe that he's doing everything according to the book in this, and that it's only interesting because boom, Sternlicht. Yep. But the price fixing thing will go on for some time, and might actually last longer than I do in this business.
Awesome. And how can we learn more about you, and how might people be able to engage you, sir?
I'm on LinkedIn, as long as they spell my name correctly, as you have. Yep. Thank you. My website is pretty easy. It's fourcornersadvisors.com. And my email address is my initials, MC as in Charlie, S at fourcornersadvisors.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, man. I can't wait to have you back for lucky number 11.
Lucky 11. So
take care, man. Have a good
Thanks,
one.
guys.
Bye-bye. I want to thank all of you for being here. Hey, that was a hot conversation. You're probably going to re-listen to it, right? Make sure you re-listen to it wherever you get your podcasts, or give us a watch on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course, all shows are at novacancynews.com. Got a brand new website coming at you very soon. Can't wait to debut that. Any final thoughts for you?
Listen, I think this is fascinating stuff. I know for any of the educators that are out there, there's opportunities to leverage the use of STAR as a learning tool. And so for my hospitality educators, I would say stay on top of this. I know we'll stay on top and make sure that we share as we hear, but it's definitely relevant information to stay on top of.
Sure is. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow with another live show. Yeah, I'm not joking around. So remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
follow your passion.
Bye.